Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful brand new day, a beautiful new Wednesday, beautiful new day in your life, a beautiful new moment in your life. Welcome to the American Mystic, and I'm your host, Denise King Francisco. And already it's an even better, beautiful day because my dear friend Janet is in the chat room. Oh my goodness, Janet, it has been a couple of minutes since you've been able to make the show from your side of the pond. Janet hails from Scotland, and England is where she lives. And we've become friends over these years. Hey, Holly. Good morning to you, too. And Gabriel says good morning because what would it be a Wednesday without lots of barking and cats and mischief right here on the American Mystic. So here we are. It's a gorgeous day. And we're going to be talking this morning about spirit. And we're going to be talking about those spirits that are uninvited, that are unwelcome. And how do they happen? Why do they happen? What, if anything, can we do about any of that? And I think it'll be a good conversation. Please join in. Holly and Janet are in the chat room, and if you would like to join us in chat for this discussion, I certainly welcome you into the chat room. And here we go. Unwanted visitors. You know, sometimes unwanted visitors happen to us in our physical life. Always makes me think of family gatherings and holidays, and you know, sometimes people show up at our door or are invited to gatherings that perhaps we're not too fond of seeing. They're unwanted, at least by us. And what do we do about the people in our lives that show up or that are no longer needed or that are toxic to us? Boundaries in our physical life are a great good thing. Having unwanted people in our lives usually means that they are unwanted for a reason. There's a reason. It's their behavior, it's their way of being, it's their energy. There are so many things that we, in our human life, in our physical life, might find toxic about somebody, or draining about somebody, or frightening about somebody. Oftentimes those are those people that are unwanted or uninvited, no longer invited into our lives, are people that in some way we feel harm us, harm our heart, harm our sense of well-being, or they just frighten us. They make us walk on eggshells. Have you ever had somebody in your life that you feel like you're walking on eggshells around, or someone that you just feel fearful of because you're not really quite sure who they are and why they are? Or just those people in your life that are just, when it comes to the end of the day, are just not nice people. They're not kind people. And eventually we decide that we no longer want to invite them into our lives, and we build hopefully healthy boundaries with those people, and we send them, or we remove ourselves away from them for our own sanity, for our own well-being. And that's okay. Having boundaries in our physical life actually is a must to have a healthy life. But what about in our spiritual life? What about our walk with spirits? Well, this also is very, very true. And the reason I began with the people in our lives, because oftentimes the people in our lives become the spirits in our lives. Everyone has a life cycle on the earth plane. For some, it's a very short life cycle. For others, it's a very long life cycle, physical life cycle. And the spiritual life cycle begins. Janet saying, oh, yes. Hey, Linda Greasiak. The Grease is in the house. What do we do about those spirits that come visiting? I'm going to shut the door to my office for just a moment, so bear with me. here. A little more quiet this way. What do we do about those spirits that come visiting us unwanted? One thing I have learned in my life as a seer, as a medium, is that just because someone passes away does not make them a saint. It does not make them angelic. Because when we shed this human body, the process of shedding our human experience, which we came here to have, can take a very, very, very long time in earth years, in physical years. It's a process of shedding our life. We don't join the realm of the illuminated ancestors, those that are well and residing in the halls of our most ancient ancestors, those that have done the work spiritually and physically. It's a process of sorting through and going through the life experiences that we've had on this earth plane. And I've also learned in my many years that for some people, the death of a particular loved one is actually a relief. It's actually a relief. Not that the love wasn't there, but the experience of having them in their life was excruciating. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. And so the passing of someone sometimes is actually a relief. There's no longer the need to worry about walking on eggshells, thinking about every word we're going to say or what they're going to feel about it or what their perception is going to be, or the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride of their life. I've watched people age light years because of someone that they love in their life and the life of that person, draining away the life force of another. And so I've learned that when somebody passes away, there can be such a tremendous amount of relief that the person who is still here on the physical plane actually has no need to hear from their beloved on the other side. No desire. And in fact, never wants to hear from them again. I've learned that. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't happen at the moment of death. Sometimes the process of forgiveness, for me, forgiveness and understanding are very similar. The process of understanding can take years, decades, lifetimes. So what do we do when a loved one, who maybe we weren't particularly fond of, but we were told we had to love them anyway because they were related to us? Have you ever been told that? Well, you got to love them because it's your relative. You got to love them because I have differing thoughts on that. Maybe sometime our wonderful friend Terry Ruel can speak to that on her show. But what do we do if this relative, this former friend, former colleague, comes calling, uninvited, and frankly unwanted, undesired? They come to visit us like the specter of Jacob Marley in A Christmas Carol. And we remember Scrooge being frightened that Jacob Marley, right, appeared. First as the door knocker, remember, on the front of the door. Why are you here? Go away. Go away. That's one of the first lines of defense with unwanted or uninvited, unwelcome spirits. Go away. You are not welcome here. You're not welcome here. There have been occasions in my practice for these many years, almost 30 years now. Actually, it's almost 30 years I've been in working practice as a seer, as a medium. Hey, Angie. Where people have said, my father comes to see me in my dreams, and my father comes to see me, when I'm daydreaming or when I'm just having alone time. And I don't want him to come visit me, Denise. He was a horrible human being. He was mean. He was spiteful. He was a horrible human being. But I feel bad because he's my dad. To which I usually say, because I'm kind of a practical person, well, if your father understands that he was abusive, because he does understand that, his consciousness understands that, then why isn't he being kind enough and considerate enough not to visit you, to visit more of those feelings upon you? Or maybe the visitation is here to tell you that maybe you need to work on that relationship. We can still work on relationships after someone has passed. And this is where a really good counselor, psychotherapist like Nicole Fix or Terry Ruel come into play, because sometimes the bonds still need to be worked on. But when we don't want them around, the very first and easiest, simplest thing we can say is go away. You're not welcome here. And you can either take the time to explain why they are not welcome, or simply say you're not welcome. And say it like you mean it. Sometimes you get visitors at your front door. You don't know who they are. You peep out the peephole, and who are they? You don't know, right? You can tell them to go away. Janet is saying, I have this with an ex-colleague. She is still on this plane, and I haven't seen her for years, but she is still an unwelcome visitor in my thoughts, still at times. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Janet. A visitor in her thoughts. She's taking up rental space in Janet's thoughts. And thoughts are like spirit. Thoughts are like spirit, because you're right about that, Janet. Sometimes when somebody crosses over, they can still consume our thoughts, and maybe we need, to get some help with that. People in our lives can consume. The spirit of them, the essence of them, can still consume our thoughts and take up precious square footage in our mind. And thoughts are energetic. In some very old arcane teachings, old teachings, esoteric teachings, our thoughts are also known as cherubim of the mind, angelics of the mind. And all of the angelics of the mind, the thoughts that we have about someone after they've passed, or while they are still on the earth plane, represent something that I'm pretty sure needs to be dealt with. I often refer to these as hauntings of the mind. They haunt me. This person haunts me in my thoughts. This person haunts me in my dreams. They haunt me. Well, what would we do in a regular haunting? What would we do with a regular haunting? We would address the haunting, whether it's the relative or the person that that stepped through that's not welcome. We would say, go away. We would have a conversation with that spirit. We can also give conversation to have conversation with the hauntings of our mind, those little cherubims, those thoughts. Cherubims of the mind are those thought bubbles that we see in cartoons. And we need to pop those, right? We need to get rid of those when they are consuming, or at the very least irritating. Having a conversation with. I've done this myself, and the way that I've always done it is that I go into a very quiet space and I call up the higher self of that person. I'd like to speak to the higher self of, the soul self of, fill in the blank. And I'd like to address all of the thoughts that I continue to have about this person, about this situation. You are no longer welcome in my space, in my thoughts, in my mind. And I ask all of the cherubim of my mind that have been carrying these thoughts, unanswered questions, replays of scenarios, to leave. You are no longer welcome here. You are no longer welcome here. I send you away with love, always with love. That's how I handle the people who have taken up real estate in my mind. Thoughts, or those visitors of situations. Do you ever have things in your life where you've replayed that scenario over and over and over and over and over and over again until it gives you a headache or a stomach ache? That replay is a living thing. It is a haunting, an unwelcome visitor that doesn't know what to do with itself. Because you've never told it, perhaps I've never told it to go away. Or thank you for reminding me that I need to seek therapy or go visit with a shaman or a medicine person, or I need to take better care of myself. Thank you for reminding me I have the message and you are free to go. You are no longer welcome here. Talk to those thoughts. They are things. They are real. They have a life of their own. And if we don't keep the cherubim of our mind in check, they will become something larger. They will become animated. They will become poltergeists that we will have to deal with for a great long time and in a different manner. You are welcome, Janet. She says, thank you, Dana. I am going to do that. Yes. At some point, when we say rest in peace, we say rest in peace for those people who have passed on, but that doesn't mean we're left in peace. Just because we say to somebody in our lives, I love you, I'm letting you go, I'm walking away, go in peace, does not mean that we are in peace until we begin the process of dealing with those thoughts, with those hauntings that exist within our own mind, within our own heart. We have to work with those. Holly is saying, my aunt is more friendly in spirit than she was on earth. I mentioned this to my mom, and now my aunt doesn't come around as much. She must have heard me. Isn't that funny? There is one thing about dying. People get a quick glimpse about the way that they've treated others. That life review is a very real thing. I've been through it. In 2005, I went through that life review in that hospital room. It's a very real thing. And I'm glad that your auntie was much nicer. For some people, the burden of their human life and laying that down, if they've been carrying stones around and they let those stones down, they come to understand the role that they played, and maybe they could have been a little bit nicer and should have been. And they begin in earnest right away in the realm of spirit to understand. And apparently your auntie is one of those people, Holly. That's a beautiful example. When people say after they've had a near-death experience that their life has changed, they don't take people for granted like they did, or the small things. There's an instantaneous recognition that what we do in this lifetime matters. It matters. It leaves a lasting impression. And those impressions are thoughts that other people will live with, feelings that other people will live with. It becomes part of our ancestral memories. What we do matters. And for some people have a great deal of suffering in their lifetime. They suffer a lot. Maybe it's mental illness or it's PTSD, trauma from war. And for them, passing can be a relief. Laying those experiences down. And in that understanding that those experiences also impacted those they've left behind, some people will then try to interject themselves to help make it better on this side. That's not an unusual thing. Well, Denise, I just want to make it better for them. I wasn't very easy. I see now how my experiences impacted them. And sometimes I will simply say on behalf of my client, they need to work it out the best way that they need to work it out, or that they can work it out in this lifetime that they are living. And you continue on toward your ancestors, those that are well, and you do your healing. You stay in your lane, they'll stay in their lane, and eventually you'll come back together in the main, right, highway, the cosmic highway of the ancestors. Physical life and spiritual life are very intertwined. And sometimes the dead have 20/20 vision real quick. And just because they have 20/20 vision does not mean that those that are here have that same 20/20 vision. Sometimes it can take a great long time to work out on this side the experiences that we've had with someone who has passed, or someone who is still present, as Janet pointed out. Yeah. Sometimes we're visited by beloveds that we have fallen out of love with. And it can be a relief. And I feel as though what I want to say at this point is, if you are somebody who's listening to me, and thank you, by the way, for listening to this podcast around the world. This is just my perspective based on my experience. And my experience is that the relief that we can sometimes feel at the passing of someone who suffered before our eyes, there was so much suffering. It could be physical suffering with an illness, mental illness. It can be addiction. There are so many ways that we can suffer on this earth plane. It's okay to feel relief. It's okay to feel relieved. It's okay to feel relieved that you are no longer beset with that burden. It's okay. And whoever it is that needs to hear that this morning, you're not a bad person because you feel that way. Okay. Sometimes our home is not only a place where those that we love come to visit us. Sometimes it's a place where people that we may not even know in spirit can come to visit us. My home is a perfect example of that. For most people who are seers, who are sensitives, your home can be that place. And if you know that you have a propensity in your home or as a person to be someone who is something of a subway system for spirit, Grand Central Station, you have to act upon that. You have to be awake and aware to that. You all know by now that every morning when I get up, I'm immediately lighting candles, welcoming my ancestors, my illuminated ancestors, to walk with me. This morning, I lit a beautiful candle to Harriet Tubman. I have a 7-day candle on my candle altar to Mama Moses, as she was also called, Harriet Tubman. I've always been fond of Harriet Tubman. And, she was really important in the rescue and the freedom of slaves from the Deep South. Although here in the United States, slavery existed in virtually all of the 13 colonies. So there's a misnomer about that. Slavery happened all over the East Coast, not just down in the South of the United States. And the reason that I bring that up is because Miss Tubman, Mama Moses, was a woman in a long line of abolitionists and freedom fighters who helped to pave the way for people to get to freedom. The North was not always free from slavery at all. And for some people, they're aghast when I say that, that slavery existed in the North. But sometimes there are spirits that I invite into the house. So this morning I invited the essence of Mama Moses, Harriet Tubman, to open up pathways for goodness, pathways to my ancestors, and for protection. Mama Moses was not a shy woman. Harriet Tubman was a woman of great substance and pretty adept, from what I understand, with a gun. And so she was also very protective. And while we're all chatting here, I also am burning some beautiful Greek incense called St. George. St. George. St. George is known for slaying the dragon. Protection. So I've invited the essence of Harriet Tubman and St. George to be protectors on this land today of my space. I do this every day. Sometimes it's Our Lady of Protection that I invite in. Some days you might find me wiping down the countertops or the floors with some Florida water. Right? I'm very conscious of the fact that I am a magnet for spirit. I'm a magnet. I'm a big old magnet, y'all. And most of the spirit that is attracted to me is wonderful, and they are welcome here in the Enchanted Forest. And some of it, once in a while, not so much. So I realize I don't have to do all of the protective work on my own. I can invite helpers, my guides, my spiritual allies, to be present. And when I light a candle, I never just light a candle for the sake of lighting a candle. If I'm going to light a candle, I give it purpose. I invite the light of Christ to permeate every square inch and iota of space within my home in this forest. There's an example. I never do it without taking the opportunity to set intention. Intention is very potent. It's not everything, but really powerful intention. Focused intention is a great, good thing. I'll probably do a show on that one. Before I go to sleep at night, I don't just flop in my bed and hope for the best. No. I also prepare myself for sleep. I invite my guards and allies, my illuminated ancestors, to help protect me, my home, these beautiful acres that we've named the Enchanted Forest. And once in a while, I'll get an uninvited spirit that's very cantankerous. and I will literally show them the door. And I will open the door. Out you go. Here, let me show you to the door. Sometimes I've had spirits in this home that show themselves to the door. And the first time that happened, Todd was a bit alarmed, let's just say. Spirits come in many forms, and not just those that were in a human form. They come in many forms. And sometimes we just don't want to be bothered. Not now. Now is not a good time to come and visit me. Now is not a good time to come and visit me. Come and visit me in the morning. I very rarely use an alarm clock. Very rarely. Instead, I will invite my guardian angels to wake me at a certain time. I began doing that, oh my goodness, 20 years ago. I need to get up at this time. Now, if I go to bed and I'm extremely exhausted from a day, I will set an alarm clock. But generally speaking, I will invite my guardian angels, my angelic allies, to wake me up at an allotted time, or to wake me up to alert me to something going on in my home, in my spaces, and they will do so. I've got a great, good relationship with my allies in spirit. Just as we should be setting boundaries in our physical life with regard to text messages, telephone calls, instant messages, just because they're called instant messages does not mean that you have to pay attention to them instantly. Just because someone calls you on the phone doesn't mean that you need to pick up that phone in that moment or answer that text right in that moment. The same thing is true with spiritual visitations. Not now. Not now. And sometimes it's not now and not ever, right? And sometimes there's an easing into spirit visitations. At first, it can be very frightening to be visited by spirits. Janet is saying, I love that. I don't often use an alarm clock either. I will also try that. Yeah, I love it. It's so gentle. It's gentle. Sometimes because I'm always dreaming when I'm asleep, something will happen in my dreams that will wake me up. That will be the alarm clock that they set. Yeah. Whether you are visited by someone, you can simply feel their presence, you can see them, you can hear them, maybe you can smell them. And if they are not welcome, because you just don't feel like entertaining ghosts in that moment, or they're not welcome because frankly you didn't like them when they were alive, or you're not quite sure who they are or what their intention is, you don't have to entertain them. You can politely or not politely, however you feel about it, depending on the situation, bid them farewell. And if they were particularly cantankerous, you might then want to take a moment to maybe light a bit of incense or smudge so that none of the residue hangs with you. If they are haunting your mind, haunting your thoughts, talk to those thoughts. Picture all of those thoughts as little cherubs with messages for you. Why can't you let this go, Dana? This is unresolved, Dana. Dana, you got to look at that today. Further investigation is needed, Dana. Or Dana, are you still hanging on to this? Take a moment, call up those cherubim, those thoughts of the mind, those hauntings of the mind, and converse with them. And give yourself some slack. Cut yourself some slack. If you're visited by someone, in spirit, that you're still dealing with the leftovers, the PTSD of having them in your physical life, tell them that. I'm not ready for visits from you. I'm still dealing with the trauma that you left me with, or the trauma that I'm carrying. I need to take care of myself. That doesn't mean that you don't love them. What that is saying is you're going to love yourself. And if you have a visitor from the other realms of spirit, the mythological realms, the realms of nature, all of those realms, the cultural realms, if you have a visitor and you are not certain about it, ask them, tell them, demand that they go away, and research. Ask. And if you don't feel you have someone to ask, one of the great things that you can do that is so easy is light a candle with the intention, thank you for bringing the teacher to me, or having me introduced to the teacher who can help me understand what just happened to me and who or what that was. Thank you for leading me to the right books, resources to understand. Thank you for leading me to the right teacher, leading the right teacher to me so that I can understand. And in any and all of it, with unwelcome guests, understand that your heart and mind are affected by that, your body is affected by that, your brain, your emotions. And sometimes we do need to pay attention to our mental, emotional well-being on this spiritual path, in processing things. Don't be afraid to reach out for a counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist, a shaman, a medicine person, a wellness practitioner, a root worker, a hoodoo practitioner here in the States. Take good care of yourself. Set boundaries. Holly is saying, I have an easier time dealing with dark entities in person than I do in spirit. Yes, sometimes people drag uninvited guests, unwelcome guests right along with them, don't they? Sometimes people walk into my home for the first time and I see their physical body and I see the non-physical beings that they've invited to the party. It's exhausting. There is something we can do about that, though. For those of you that are Patreons of the Temple Within, LLC, I do have a Patreon account, and every month, it's $10 a month to be an official patron of my work. And that $10 a month gives you a class with me. Every month, it's usually about a half-hour long class, maybe a little bit longer, about various ways of working with spirit for yourself, honing your own spiritual gifts and talents. That's really the root of the work that I do for my Patreons. And I also give hints from Heloise, as I call them, hints from the American mystic, about what do you do? What can you do at your doors where people enter your home? Well, there are, some people call them wards. A witch may call them wards. You can have a candle. I have at my very front door, I have a St. Bridget's cross above the door. I have a magnificent besom broom that was a gift from Lori Bruno in Salem, Massachusetts, and they're made in England, as they have been made for hundreds of years for not only the royal family, but others as well in England. I have one of those at my front door with the broom bristles pointing up, of course. I have a beautiful pair of shoes that I purchased in Egypt at a temple. all there so that if anybody walks through my door, who they may be dragging along in spirit is left outside the door. And I will then handle what's left outside the door later, but they're not coming into my home. If you come in through the garage way into the kitchen of my home, the eating area, it's like an old farm kitchen coming in through my garage, you will have to pass through a St. Francis of Assisi cross. It's the one particularly symbolic of St. Francis. And you have to walk through an eagle dancer. I have a 5-foot by 4-foot painting. Actually, it's like a 6-foot by 5-foot painting of an eagle dancer, powwow eagle dancer. You have to walk through that. So not only do you leave your muddy shoes outside my home, you have to leave your muddy energy outside my home. And the same is true on the upper level lanai doors and the lower level lanai doors. You have to walk by something, whether it's a candle or a sacred symbolic piece, to clear your aura. Also clears my aura when I'm coming in. If I've been out shopping, particularly if I'm antiquing, I like the benefit of walking through all of those gauntlets of goodness coming into my home. These are some of the things that I talk about on Patreon every month. That's how I begin the lesson, or with these hints of things that we can do. Also, my new book will be released in November, Soul Minding. And that can be ordered, a signed copy can be ordered at schoolofsacredstudies.com. Soul Minding. And in the Soul Minding book, it gets kind of deep, frankly. Gets a little deep. We have some conversations in the book about end-of-life care and physical death, rites of passage, death without dying, illness, recovery, the afterlife, and making our way back to the ancestors, assisting the unwell dead, animals, pets, empaths, seers, sensitive, ancestral burdens and blessings. Those are some of the topics in soul minding. And how you do it. How do we do those things? And if you are doing them because it's part of your nature to do that, then you have visitors. Some you have bidden, and they are welcome, and some have appeared unbidden. Yeah. Next up this morning, we have Terry Ruel, who's going to talk about these times that we're living in. And about the loss of innocence on steroids, right? Everything is on steroids right now. The roids are raging. Roid rage, it's called here in the States. What do we do about that? How do we help ourselves? How are we kind to ourselves and understand our own place in all of this that's going on? For those of you that are listening, mystics, everywhere. This is the time of the return of the mystic. And part of that return is holding the light of understanding that something greater is going on around Grandmother Earth right now. Something greater, something great and good is happening. It's being born. And at least in the maternity ward that I gave birth in, here in Grand Rapids, we call this part of the birthing process the he-he-he-hoo breathing process, right? We're in that part where we're not ready to push, but we're getting ready to push and give birth to. And mystics from wherever you are, some of you are American mystics like me. Janet is a Scottish mystic who lives in England. Wherever you happen to be as a mystic, hold the light. Continue to nourish your light, to take care of it. It is precious. We are holding a part of the weave. Something is being unwoven right now around Grandmother Earth, and something is being rewoven anew. And we are holding light strands in that weave and upon that weave, as Amantha Murphy would say. Hold the light. It is precious. It is needed. Nourish your spirit, your soul, your body, your mind. Have fun. Engage in joyful activities. Laugh. Be well. Shine your light. We all knew that this time was coming, a time of great change. Some mystics here in the United States are referring to this time as the Second Revolution. The first one happening in the 1770s. And that got me to thinking about the fact that I am related to George Washington and Mr. Adams. A few of the signers of the Declaration of Independence are my uncles. They are my cousins. They are my grandfathers. The founders of some of the colonies here are my grandfathers. And whether or not that is the case for you, there is a revolution going on. Hold the light. Paul Revere comes to mind, right? The British are coming. The changes are coming. Hold the light, shine the light. Blessings be, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Thank you, Lindy. I love you.